So, folks, there's a man, there's a beanie named Tim Pool. Now, Tim is a proud fence sitter, someone who can never truly be nailed down on his real political beliefs. He's someone who plays it all very close to the chest. He's, a very interesting individual, to say the least, which, of course, is why he decided to do a stream 3 days ago with one John Doyle. Now, for those who've watched my channel for a while, you might be familiar with John Doyle as, hey, isn't that guy who tried to, rebrand Nazism as a new political movement based on Gaston from Beauty and the Beast? And yes, that is the guy who tried to do that. He's a full-on white nationalist. He hasn't been doing as many videos lately, but, that hasn't stopped him from getting on Tim Pool, I guess. And, Nomi Sunrider, valid reaction, a lot of ellipses in a row, valid reaction. But the twist to all of this is that Tim Pool did this show with John Doyle and another creator called
It's
Soy
hard
Pill.
to get nailed down on your beliefs when you don't have any. Das Vedanya Comrade.
Very true, Sake Tanuki. Also, I'm impressed that text-to-speech can read Das Vidanya. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. But people might not be as familiar with Soy Pill. I certainly wasn't. And my initial assumption, and I did pre-watch some of this, okay? Just full disclosure. And my assessment of Soy Pill is that Soy Pill is very much a lib, content creator. He's a political content creator, but he's firmly in the liberal category. And I think it means I'm going to have a lot of commentary on this particular endeavor that we're about to embark upon. And we're going to do our best. The title of this episode is "Liberals Are Soy Boys. Reject Masculinity, Debate Me, the Culture War with Tim Pool." And boy howdy, I can tell you it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. I think he's more leftist. Okay, I mean, we'll see. Maybe the tactic that I observed here was trying to get them off kilter, but we'll see. Here we go. A neo-lib. I don't know about that. Let me put it this way. When I checked out Soy Pill's social media, he did an event with Ro Khanna on how Democrats can get men on board. I think he's part of that SAM project for Democrats to reach out to men. He's fine. I'm just, as a leftist, I wasn't nodding along being yes, I agree with every single one of these points. I'm just, he's a lib in my book. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just his debate tactic for this. I don't know. But we'll find out. Yeah, guys, I'm not saying liberals can't make good content. God, Tim Pool just staring into your soul in the
liberal men are soy boys. Debate me. Okay? That's the debate tonight. Well, I always think it's nighttime. I'm just, doing live in the morning. This morning, our debate is liberalism rejecting masculinity. We got a couple of gentlemen joining us to have this debate. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah. Before we start, one of us is going to have to change, right?
Well, we're not completely wearing the same thing, but I was wearing it first. So, I mean.
Well, so I've been told by Alex Jones that you wear the beanie because you have the, what did he say? He said, Tim Pool has the mark of the beast on his forehead, and he hides it because he's the Antichrist.
Well, I mean, he calls it the mark of the beast. It's a pentagram.
Okay. But yeah, I'm the Soy Pill. I make video essays. I'm a progressive. I'm a soy boy, but I try to own it, and try to fight the stereotype. But
all right. He's a soy boy. Yeah. And you are not a soy boy, sir?
I don't know if I would identify myself as such necessarily. I'm.
Can we just say that John Doyle's one of the least masculine looking men in the conservative space? I don't know. He's got that scrawny nerd aesthetic going on, which makes it even funnier that he tries to project masculinity.
Simply a guy who talks about politics on the internet. My name is
That's pretty
John
soy.
Doyle, and I'm glad to be back on the program.
I don't know. He looks like he works out more than you do.
Well, he's got to, you know, that's the thing. That's why he calls himself the soy pill. His job and why he exists in the ecosystem is to sort of be a lightning rod and be like, soy boys? Absolutely not. Look at me. I go to the gym. So it's like a costume. I mean, I respect a good physique, but it has to be that way because it's
Respecting a man's
and
physique
it's
is pretty
Hassan.
soy, I gotta say. Like,
the month for
you're
that.
checking me out. Like,
I didn't say that, but no, I mean, it's indicative of discipline and things like that, which, I mean, 99% of people on your side would reject, but it's good for you. I'm happy for you personally.
well, we'll try to change that. That's kind of the point.
Okay, well, let's get into that. I mean, that's the general idea. There's a couple elements to this. We were going over what is the core theme yesterday, and it's that masculinity is incompatible with liberalism was one of the arguments, or that liberalism rejects masculinity. I guess
God.
that's your argument. Do you want to kick off what you mean by this?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true, whether you look at it from like a fundamental perspective where the idea behind liberalism is more or less derivative of this like blank slate. John Locke, father of liberalism, that we are all these blank slates, and if there is to be a masculine or
big,
feminine
massive dumps.
identity, that is simply because of what's popularly, I guess, argued to be like a social construct or something, but it's not something that's really rooted in nature. There is no natural way for men and women to behave, and insofar as we see those throughout society or history,
He's I'm sorry, you're trying to argue this guy's a massive gym bro with that physique? Like, I'm not saying, I'm not no shade. Those arms are scrawny.
it's because men typically have oppressed women for whichever reason. And so I would say that it rejects the concept of masculinity. And there are ways to intellectualize this and, you know, what is a real man or something. But I would just say that it's how men typically tend to be.
I'm not dissing the beanpole physique. I'm just saying, like, for a guy whose entire thing is, hey, you should be a Nazi because Nazis will allow you to be truly masculine. Like, he's a scrawny little motherfucker. That's all I'm saying. I have nothing against scrawny men.
Behave when left to their own devices. And moreover, I would say it rejects it in terms of its political implementation, because when liberalism or liberals tend to get in power, what we tend to see is not only they're being rejected by men who are maybe more normal or masculine, as you see, whether it's you're looking at who men are voting for, or you look at maybe the most, I guess, extreme manifestations of left-wing men in the country. Look at like the Antifa mugshots. They all tend to look a certain way. And then
Hey, you remember all those Antifa mugshots you saw? Yeah. Well, what if that was all liberals? Huh? That's the basis of my political analysis.
And when liberals get into power, they persecute masculinity. I mean, they make male behavior illegal. They empower women. They demonize men throughout the culture.
Male behavior's been illegal. Did you know that, chat? They outlawed male behavior. I wonder what male behavior he's possibly talking about.
Things of that nature. There's even like a biological component, which I know we've covered on the show before with RFK and different things they're putting into the.
What male behavior is like illegal from like?
Hey, let's go.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, first of all, patriarchy, fatherhood, courting, all things like.
It's illegal to be a father. It's illegal to court a woman. And like, you have to live in like a completely alternate reality to believe this shit, you know? Like, the patriarchy is illegal. We literally live under patriarchy right now. Fatherhood's illegal. Fathers still exist. Courting your woman is illegal. People can date. Like, what are you talking about? What is this, 1867? Uncle Gumbald, unironically, John Doyle's the kind of guy who'd argue that 1867 was a better time for all involved. It was the golden age of society.
That, I mean,
Except that he'd be arguing that because he's in favor of slavery.
Being white is illegal. The pasty Archie is over.
legal though? Yes, yeah. In many cases, like typical male behavior, which would be used to take control of your household, to meet a woman, things like that are.
I'm sorry. What typical male behavior would be used to take control of a household? I'm just curious. I'm just asking some questions. I'm struggling here. What typical male behavior dominates the household? because it really seems like he's talking about beating your wife. He yearns for the good old days when you could just beat your wife and it was illegal.
Culturally enforced to either be, denigrated or demonized, or in some cases, like, yeah, you can have, police harass you if you make, or maybe coworkers harass you or HR harass you for making an inappropriate comment at the office or something like that.
I think Doyle
but
is
that's
taking the
illegal,
you shouldn't have to ask for consent route. I'm curious if Ha admits to it.
Oh, so Ren, John Doyle's the kind of guy who is basically going to eventually admit to what he's talking about. Though I wonder if he's matured as like a political commentator in his like political ideology where he's not going to do that on Tim Pool's show. It is definitely the kind of thing that in the past he'd admit to on his own show.
I would say to the illegal component, there is not that on the books it says being a man is illegal. Like obviously beating your wife is illegal and it should be. However, there are circumstances.
Notice how Tim has to head that one off at the pass because we were all thinking that's exactly what John Doyle was trying to imply. Notice Tim is already we're less than 5 minutes in and Tim is like no. Tim, beating your wife is illegal. We can all agree that is good. Moving on.
Circumstances where because of this system, the balances of it, men who don't beat their wives, who actually get beaten by their wives, will still have the police called on them, and they are more likely to get arrested.
Yeah, but that's not making masculinity illegal. That's a concept of these, perceived gender roles. Women are perceived as weaker, and frankly, mostly are. So if that does happen, it's just a matter of like, hey, there's this
weak.
big guy, huh?
I said women are weak.
Yeah, well, I mean, just in general, they're on a spectrum. Like, no, I mean, people like get to mad at the left for like rejecting the reality of like, most women are weaker than most men, which is true. But like, that does come back and hurt men too sometimes when it's like, oh yeah, like how could this woman be beating this man? Like, how could that possibly?
Yeah. I hope you guys can understand why I started listening to this and I was like, what is this guy's deal? And why I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know how progressive this guy is, As a trans woman in particular, like that hits me in a very certain way.
Possibly happen. But that's a factor of viewing women as less.
I'm just saying.
But this could also just be like his tactic for the debate to throw off folks like Tim. It is. They are trying to get under your skin this entire time. So I'm willing to like withhold judgment.
If we're going to view the law as a rigid, it is as it is, then I would disagree with you, John. It's not illegal to be a man, but if we're looking at the function of what law does, because typically we don't. I bring this up all the time. There are laws in the books we don't actually enforce.
Sure.
Like my favorite, as I was reading this book, and it said it's illegal in Boston to cool a pie on your windowsill on Tuesday or something.
Well, yeah, because it interferes with air traffic when the people float through the air.
Well, back in the day, it was with bears. It's like you live in a small village, you don't want a bear coming by, don't put food on your windowsill, but now who cares, right?
It's the results of social incentives, cultural programming, which create the same effect, a deterrent.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, genuine question here. Why would people put pies on windowsills to cool? Like, is it less like the windowsill positioning and more like air circulation issues? Because back in the day, like you didn't have like, I don't know, a house fan circulating air in your house. Well, you had to cool them down, but like you could theoretically you could just put it someplace else in your house. I know it's a meme, but also like there is some historical truth to it. People do historically be stealing pies off of windowsills. The outside air is presumably cooler than it was in the warm, unless it was a warm month. I mean, probably it got hot inside because of like the oven and like as I say it, of course, it starts making sense.
That would be, created perhaps by a law that's enforced, but without having the bad optics of like literally making it illegal to be a man or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so
guys, I understand the basic concept of a pie that is hot getting cooler over time. I was just saying, like, you could presumably put your pie elsewhere to cool it down other than a windowsill. Okay, all right.
There's an apparatus of law that is anti-male or masculine.
Nobody had desk fans. Are you guys using desk fans to cool off your pie? I'm done with this. I'm done with you guys.
I don't know. I don't see that. So I hear what you're saying. I think a problem with the left is
next you guys are going to be talking to me about like how you mix together ingredients and it turns from like flour into cookies. God damn, guys. You guys are chat-splaining me right now.
For years, being a straight white guy, it was like the norm, right? And then finally the left starts getting into power, and it's like, hey, let's highlight all these marginalized voices, right? Like women come here, black people come here, trans voices, gay voices, whatever. And the problem is now it's not focused on men. And a lot of these pendulum swinging people are like, yeah, you guys are the patriarchy, you guys are the cis-het white males. And there is like a attack or at least a narrative against that. But I don't know, it kind of reminds me of something like white privilege, like that term, where if you look like
you have your 10 kids take shifts blowing on the pie. Yeah, the original desk fan. Oh god.
Like back in the 90s and 2000s, I want to say like kind of everyone just accepted like, oh yeah, black people get treated worse by the police. Like they have it worse off. Like there's the what's that Onion skit where it's like, this is America. No one deserves to be treated like a black man, right? Like, yeah, it's like they rule that a white woman could be treated as a black man. That's like, right. And it's like that was kind of like culturally accepted. But as soon as you introduce the term like white privilege, now you have people like white guys, like even me when I first heard this in high school, I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like I have problems, right? Like things are happening to me that are out of my control that suck, and now you're telling me my life's just better. Like this is kind of this weird term that's like attacking the people that really haven't done anything wrong in a way to frame the idea that other people are less well off. And I see that kind of happening with men now, where they're no longer centered because it was the norm for so long. And so people feel rejected from the left. But really the left is this umbrella of, hey, yeah, you can be a soy boy, you can be like a little twinkie guy, femme, coded, gay, whatever, but you can also be masculine. But those traditionally masculine people, which is the norm, which most people do fall into, are not, don't feel as welcome because they're not the only thing that's being focused on, which is what the right does, right? It's like, hey, you can be, this is all we are, rather than this is the umbrella that encompasses that. And people like me, like I grew up in the most progressive place like on the planet in San Francisco. I went to like a liberal college, UC San Diego. This is like, all the SJWs. There were people like on the middle of the campus with signs that said like white men bore me, or little posters are like, oh, don't say minorities, say POC, right? Like very, very progressive SJW stuff back in 2016 era. And like none of that made me less masculine or make me want to be less masculine. It just made me say, oh, okay, that's kind of annoying, or like that's weird. But like the idea that it's such a turnoff that it's pushing you into a different party is weird to me, because like my ideals haven't changed. It's just like, oh, okay, like I can still be me. I can still be this in this party. I'm just not the sole focus.
I think.
And like, honestly, that's a really good answer right there, right? Like it summarizes the fact that like historically people in power have been a certain demographic, especially in this country, white, wealthy, male, straight, cis. And like that has changed. There are now more categories of people. There's now more ways you can be. There are now more ways in which other people can hold power in society, and that's threatening to some people. Like the idea that you have to change to possibly accommodate others. Well, change is scary to some people, In fact, I would say change is scary to a lot of people. But he's right. Like your ideals shouldn't change just because, like, I don't know, there are more and different types of people than when you were a kid, or you're more aware of.
I don't think it's about sole focus or centering or anything. I mean, if you even are familiar with like the average temperament or disposition of a conservative or a Republican, these are people who fundamentally like just want to be left alone. Like you don't have to.
God, I wish that was true.
Go and talk to a bunch of like Trump supporters and appeal to them as like the white vote or the straight vote or things of that nature. And I think it is actually pushing.
Wait. I'm sorry.
Like just want to be left alone. Like you don't have to go and talk to a bunch of like Trump supporters and appeal to them as like the white vote or the straight vote or things.
I'm sorry. The entire basis of the Republican Party for the last 50, 60 years has literally been doing that. The entire basis of the Republican Party is the Southern strategy, the process by which the Republican Party systematically targeted white evangelical Christians across the United States. Like that's literally the thing that the Republicans have been doing. You cannot understand our current political predicament without understanding that basic fact. The fact that after like the battle was lost on segregation, conservatives moved towards the fight on abortion and politicizing evangelical Christians, predominantly white evangelical Christians who felt that they were under attack specifically because private schools were forced to integrate. And that was viewed at the time as an attack on their fundamental rights to religious freedom. And that's how then Republican political strategists got involved with the fight on abortion and politicized about abortion, which before had not been a prominent issue in white evangelical religious politics. Like literally the entire assault on Roe v. Wade has been a product of this Southern strategy. The entire base of the Republican Party, the entire reason we have like QAnon ascendant and white nationalism ascendant right now is, Christian nationalism ascendant right now is due to that, you know?
Things of that nature. And I think it is actually pushing people who otherwise would have preferred to identify themselves with like the predominant party into the arms of Republicans or Trump, as has been the case with a lot of media personalities, for example, because they do feel ostracized, not just because of maybe some of the excesses that you see on the college campus with like a sign or a t-shirt that says like boys are icky or like down with white power or something, but because the policies which these people are pursuing ultimately are dispossessing normal white Americans. And they're becoming more aware of that, which is why they're walking away. They may agree with you.
Dispossessing them of what? of what? Also, I really do want to make a shirt that says "Icky Boys." Maybe like "I love Icky Boys." I don't know. We'll workshop the idea.
On, wanting to be left alone, people can have their own identity, but at the end of the day, when that party gets into power, they act in ways which dispossess normal Americans, takes money from them, opportunities from them, and redistributes it to literally the entire world and demonizes them throughout the culture.
Yes. The entire, I love that in his worldview, the entire world is robbing white men of their power and money. Do you feel like you've been screwed over? That's because the entire world robbed you. Like, literally people who are trying to frame themselves as the most victimized on the planet.
So I would like it to be some umbrella. I think that would be nice, but that's not what we tend to see when you guys get into power. And even in your own case.
The issue is that even as you're describing it, people view politics and people of all generations as a single group.
Yeah, that's
so
John
when you
Doyle,
say things like, it's the right, they're, white masculine men or whatever, and the left is trying to lift up voice.
Excellent question, Adam S. Why is John Doyle's definition of normal seemingly only white men? It's almost like he's some kind of white nationalist or something. It's almost like that because it is like that.
Voices that aren't actually white men. That is saying that the younger generation of liberals have an issue with boomers and Gen X, so they penalize Gen Z men in a way that these Gen Z men can't comprehend or they were not party to.
I think it's perceived.
This guy is Soy Pill. And I believe he's kind of like a liberal progressive type. I don't know. We'll find out more.
It's penalizing. I don't think it is, but I know what you mean.
But it is.
That's the thing. Well,
no, but it is
like I have never felt penalized.
A group attacking white people, insulting white people, and then they're allowed to do it is creating a condition by which you are allowed to be racist to a group of men that did not experience this white privilege that was described.
Sure, but
so that's penalizing.
See, one of the things that was bothering me when I pre-watched a bit was like ceding any of the ground to these people, Well,
first of all, again, as much as I have a problem with the term white privilege, I think you can look at like statistics of do white people get as much shit as, black people.
Great. Now let's go back to what I was saying about Gen Z.
I'm just saying, how about we do experience it, but the problem is like...
Let's talk about my point.
We can.
An 18-year-old man did not experience the white privilege of a 55-year-old white man.
You're
and
saying
so
like economics.
An 18-year-old who's entering the world and saying, man, it's really hard on me. Yeah. And then the left in these colleges say, you're white, you're bad, you're stupid, you bore me. And when they go, please stop making fun of me, they go, no, you...
I love that people like Tim Pool have to make up a fictional scenario in which a white man goes to college and like gets to his first college class and like the entire classroom turns and they're all like non-white and like gay and trans and women, and they all point at him and say, "Ha, you're white, you're dumb, you're boring." And then in this scenario, "Please stop making fun of me." And they say, "No." And it's the most devastating thing you can imagine. Like, it's crazy, right? Like, we can all appreciate that this is, you bore me, Yakubian. Yeah. No.
You have white privilege. And he goes, no, the old guy might have, but I don't.
Well, that's the thing is when I say, hey, generationally, you can look at the way that these races have been treated. And yeah, like you're not experiencing the boomer housing market, right? Like I'm not as well off as my parents. They bought a house for like, 300 grand and it's now worth like $1 bajillion. I would never be able to afford that. I probably never will be able to. I just have to wait for them to die. But
nah,
that's
that
not
one
the same
American,
thing as white
it's
privilege.
costume jewelry.
Before that.
Huh?
BlackRock will get it before that.
That's true. That's true.
Not even joking.
Yeah. No. The idea that like that has something to do with like the way that different races are treated by some sort of system, I think is irrelevant. But the point is, this is what I'm saying is like, you don't feel white privilege. I'm not like, oh boy, what a great day. Well, I am like, what a great day to be white. Cause like, let's be real. It's kind of hard to be all the other races, but you're not feeling this advantage. It's the point is like, if it was framed as something like black detriment.
I actually disagree with you about it's so hard to be the other races.
Harder? Oh, what, cause you're Korean?
Yeah, when I was growing up, I was told that if I put down that I was Mexican, I would get free stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, so my parents told me not to put down that I was Asian when I was applying for anything because I'd be discriminated against.
You're talking about like DEI policies and how like, or maybe like an affirmative action thing.
Tim, wait, Tim, so you're saying I disagree that it would be harder to be other races. And then you told a story about your parents telling you to sign up as a different race so that you wouldn't be discriminated against. Anyway, like I feel like I shouldn't, this somehow broke my brain, right? Like you're trying to argue, I don't think it's harder to be other races, but then you're literally pointing out a way in which it's harder to be a non-white person in America. That seems like you're proving the opposite of what you're trying to assert.
That's like trying to correct a historical record. So like a white person might feel like, well, this guy, because this happened to me in college. Like I saw people that were maybe not as like smart as me get advantages, maybe because it was like a, SWE is like Society of Women Engineers. Like they'd get certain opportunities or scholarships. And it's like, well, shit, like I didn't get 10 grand to just go and do this like one particular thing. It's literally just because you have a vagina. That does happen.
Female privilege.
Sort of.
Literally.
But the point is, like, if you're looking at it as a societal thing, it's like that is something that in this specific, minutia of college, yeah, there are people that are going to be lifted up over maybe white people. But you don't see that as privilege insofar as like, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting the better end of the deal. In fact, these people are, but it's talking about a historical thing of, oh, these people had it worse off for so long. But that's why I would call it like a black detriment and not like a white privilege. But this is...
See, I don't think this is a useful line of attack. I understand the point that he's trying to make. I just think that like getting bogged down in how you sell the point here is less important than the actual like point itself, which I feel like he's getting that mixed up a little bit, but like that's fine. Like he's doing okay. I understand what he's going for.
Back to your point on what was it?
What does that mean though?
The point.
Right. Like this is a bit in the weeds. Exactly.
I still remember how in high school all the white kids were lying about getting rejection letters just for being white. It's fragility based on lies.
I mean, yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like, oh, we don't need to hear that. You don't need to hear it twice. But like, another way to have engaged with Tim here would be to talk about the fact that like Tim tried to say, well, like white privilege isn't real because like a 55-year-old white man had more economic opportunities than an 18-year-old white man does today. But like the actual comparison there is not an 18-year-old white man to a 55-year-old white man. It's an 18-year-old white man to a 18-year-old black man. Like both are entering into the same economic time. And you can talk about like the 55-year-old white man and the 55-year-old black man. Like that would be another point of comparison, but you aren't like, if you're talking about like, oh yeah, in the past there were different economic opportunities. Yeah, that's just the nature of like linear time, I don't know what their point is. Well, I think we're in the weeds, right? I think that his point was essentially that calling it white privilege is confusing because there are white people who, despite having white privilege, have shitty lives. And so when you encounter someone like that and say you have white privilege, that's alienating to them because they don't wake up every day and feel like they have any kind of privilege. They're living in deprivation, and they don't feel that privilege. But the comparison there is between a white man in that situation and a black man in that situation, and who would have an easier time getting out of that situation or bettering their situation. And the reality in our country is that like historically equally positioned, or historically, like, Black men and white men have not been equitably positioned in society due to historical discrimination, right? And that has ongoing economic effects that persist to today. And so the thing is that when you're talking about privilege in this context, it's important to point out that it's not that you have like these superpowers and everything's going to be great for you. It's that by virtue of your position in our society and like how you were born, you may have certain opportunities that others might not have. And that would be considered like an advantage, especially if you benefit from historical prejudices, etc., that make it easier for someone like you to succeed. But understand that making it easier for you to succeed doesn't mean that it's easy to succeed. Easier does not mean easy. Does that make sense?
For so long. I mean, we've been following the vector of like progressivism and civil rights for what, 60 years now.
Yeah.
And by any metric, I mean, whether it's like familial wealth, house ownership, which
Black
you alluded to.
generational wealth right now is like similar levels to like Reconstruction era. It's not very good.
Exactly. So we've been following this vector of progressivism and saying that this is to make up for injustices of the past. And this vector would suggest that those injustices have been alleviated because it's now illegal to discriminate in varying capacities.
Wait. No, that's actually not the case. Just because you make like I'm sorry, the comparison or like maybe analogy here would be like, you know, if you start a race and shoot your competitor in the leg and then you run for like 10 feet and the referees go, well, we're going to make it illegal for you to shoot any more people in the legs. You're still going to be faster than that person you shot in the leg. You know, like that's the harm persists. So the issue here is that like historical injustice has ramifications that are economic, societal, cultural, etc. Like that's all linked together. And so the economic deprivation, the treating people as property for 400 years, denying them the accrual of generational wealth, the ability to own property, etc. Like that actually has meaningful impact that persists to this day.
But the situation
why
has
would it
not
suggest
improved.
that it's been alleviated?
Because we have the civil rights movement, the Great Society, all of these fruits, which has made it illegal for you to discriminate in the ways that you're alluding to in terms of these past injustices.
Yeah, but like,
so if that's been made, if that's been made illegal, then it would suggest that maybe these injustices were not orchestrated from the top down, people just being mean and racist for no reason, but that there are just cultural things that are different between people.
You know, I love that John Doyle here argues that like, oh yeah, people weren't discriminating for no reason. They were discriminating for good reasons. Like that's the implication he's making there, right? Like in his world, because he's a white nationalist, his argument is that Black people are justly discriminated against. And you know, he's going to argue like there's something inherent to the culture that is like that. And my guess is with John Doyle, he's going to make the argument that it goes beyond culture, that the culture is somehow derived from the biology of Black people. That's my suspicion here. We'll see if I'm correct.
Exists in America, which is why there really hasn't been a big change between the 60s and now in terms of
how
are performing.
I would argue that blockbusting and redlining, which still exists today illicitly, would be the argument against that.
Redlining, if you look at the actual counties which were affected, it didn't take into account things like credit score, income. If you actually look at the data behind redlining, it's just it's a liberal talking point the same way that Jimmy...
No, wait. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Against that.
Redlining, if you look at the actual counties which were affected, it didn't take into account things like credit score, income. If you actually look at the data behind redlining, it's just it's a liberal talking.
Yeah, he's just bullshitting, because the entire process of redlining was essentially something that they justified along economic grounds, but it was kind of bullshit. You know, like the justification was, oh, well, they simply don't have enough money, and yet loans to white people of equal economic position and standing, well, those went through, weirdly enough. You know, like the credits, yeah, exactly, James Hawk. Like the credit score system was part and parcel with the redlining. It was in part created to justify the redlining system. You know, it was there to punish people of a specific economic class who were overwhelmingly African American due to historical economic hardship, going all the way from slavery to today. Like that was a thing. And he's like, oh, well, it didn't take into account credit score. It absolutely did.
I can point the same way that Jimmy...
Like, I love that his idea is essentially that, like, historians were too stupid to look at credit scores. Like, that's his argument. Like, they thought of everything, but they didn't think of the credit score. They just thought a poor African American was being discriminated against. They didn't look any further than that. You know those historian types, always lacking thoroughness. That's a joke, because if you know any historian, they are fastidious as fuck. They love the nitty gritty details.
I don't know.
Blockbusting is when, still to this day, real estate agents will intentionally buy a house, move a black family into a white neighborhood, then solicit the residents there to sell their properties because, quote, there goes the neighborhood, and then try and buy the houses on a premium. And then what they do is they buy the house, rent it to a black family, go to all the houses and say property values will go down because a black family moved into your neighborhood. You need to sell to us now. They'll get the property for a premium. Then a year later, they move the black family out, restore the prices up to where they are in the market. This was made illegal in the 80s, but it was a principle.
Historians will refer to them as best credit score comrades.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for supporting the show and for the 2 tier 1 subs. I very, very much appreciate that. Thank you so goddamn much.
I am sure all those VA home loans from the GI Bills that Black World War II veterans didn't get were because of credit scores.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Also, like, the process that Tim Pool is describing here was literally part of the white flight process that created the suburbs. Essentially, Black folks moved into urban areas, and a lot of racists, rather than live next to Black people, fled to the suburbs. And that phenomenon allowed different realtors to take advantage of that to, make money. Weird how, by the way, a lot of this always comes down to people using a racially biased system. A system, perhaps one could argue, is systematically racist in order to profit. It's almost like there's a relationship there that perpetuates itself. Surely that won't continue to be relevant in this conversation.
Way by which
sure
they perpetuated this. We still see this today, where it is typically recognized as a racist market fact. Like, I'm not saying there's an individual who's racist, it's Black people, but you go to any real estate agent and ask them, like, hey, you've got investment properties. What would you do if a Black family moved next to your investment property? They're going to tell you they're going to sell.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you walk up to any person who has an investment property and say a Black person moved in next door and they tell you immediately that they're going to sell. I don't believe that. I think that there might be edge cases where you find a racist who will say that, but I don't think people are generally going in 2025 going, oh, a Black couple moved in next door, time to sell our investment property. I just don't think that is the case. If you're rich enough to have investment properties, you don't care if a Black couple moved in next door.
And they're gonna say, look, I've got no problem with a Black family, tons of friends are Black, but the market will react negatively.
Is he saying that segregation is good real estate advice? I mean, he's saying racism is good real estate advice. He's saying that the forces that created white flight are still highly active today, and that they are a true economic fact that you can make money off of.
To this, so I probably don't want to lose money and I would sell. That concept perpetuates since the 80s. So I don't know how you get rid of this. You know, it's funny because even liberals do it. Like the story that I've told is a woman that I
like. Again, to the extent that, like, the existence of Black people next door would lower the property value. That's an effect of people being racist, Tim. You realize that, right? Like, and if people become less racist over time, which we know is true, then that effect also diminishes, Tim. The goal... Okay, whatever.
I worked with, who was this progressive Hispanic woman, she said that she inherited a property in New York City from her, grandpa or from her family or whatever. She was woke, as one could describe woke. And I said, what would you do if a black family moved next door to your property? He goes, oh, I'd sell right away. And I was like,
Tim, that's a very weird conversation to have, first of all. Like, you find out your coworker inherited a house and you're like, what would you do if a black couple moved in? I don't believe that this happened, actually. I feel like you had a coworker who may have inherited a house, maybe, if I'm even granting that much of the story, and she said she's going to sell it right away, and now you're just adding to it after the fact that you asked her that question.
Isn't that racist? And she goes, I'm not trying to be racist, but like my property would lose all its value right away.
I'm sorry. Who thinks that? Oh, yeah, if a black couple moved in next door, my property would lose all of its value? What the fuck?
I'm like, okay, so long as you believe that and perpetuate it, that's going to cause problems to the net worth and like the generational wealth of black families.
Right.
So
it's not illegal, right? And
it's not illegal.
Like stuff like that happens all the time. That's kind of what people describe when they talk about systemic racism. It doesn't take a like single individual being like, oh, I hate black people, like throw them in jail. Although that does still happen. And that's the other thing is like you talk about like, yeah, it is illegal. Yeah, we did pass the civil rights law, but like, kicking and screaming, half the country was fighting against it. And those people didn't disappear, and their kids probably have very similar values. We are becoming more progressive, but the idea that like, oh, well, because it's illegal, it's gone now is just like not borne out. Like these things absolutely still happen. These people still hold these views in a lot of different.
That's actually very true. I think so far he's doing an okay job holding down the fort. I would quibble with some of his formulations, but soy pill's all right so far.
Places. So
of course it is. I mean, if there were any evidence that it were actually happening, even on the individual level, like this is the example that comes to mind. Look at like what happened to Papa John. Papa John literally said the N-word in a meeting, telling employees of what not to say.
No.
He was quoting someone, right?
Papa John said something to the effect of, how come Colonel Sanders said N-word and he got no flack for this?
Okay.
Why is that acceptable? He was condemning that Colonel Sanders used a slur and no one cared, and they used that against him to strip him of everything.
The point being...
Oh my God. Okay, so for those of you who don't remember the Papa John's incident, basically Papa John's... Do you guys remember when football players were taking a knee during the national anthem as a way of protesting? You guys remember that was happening back in like 2016, 2015? Yeah, Colin Kaepernick, exactly. Papa John had like a meltdown on social media about that, and people perceived him as very racist for it. And so what the Papa John's company did was bring in a marketing team. And on the conference call with this marketing team that was brought in specifically to train him about how to not do a PR snafu, how to avoid getting into a public relations debacle, Papa John said, well, something along the lines of, I don't think it was really that bad what I said about the NFL. I mean, Colonel Sanders can call black people the N-word, and, except he didn't say the N-word. And like at the marketing firm quit and eventually leaked that to the press. And it turns out a lot of people really perceive you as racist when you're in the middle of an attempt to salvage your PR brand image, and you are arguing that actually what I did was totally not racist and actually pretty okay. I mean, look at that. Colonel Sanders can like call people the N-word, and like I'm sorry, but if your argument of like I'm not racist, see, Colonel Sanders says insert most racist word you can possibly say to a room full of PR professionals, they all quit because you were being racist. I don't know why Colonel Sanders is hard for me to say today. Big oof, yeah. I don't know. All I'm saying is that maybe this isn't the hill you guys want to die on. But he was just a good-hearted guy trying to ask why Colonel Sanders could say racist things and he couldn't. Like that doesn't actually carry the water you think it does.
It's such
Maybe
a
I can
hot
use this to
market.
pivot back to the topic, though, actually.
Any instance of racism, you can file civil suits, you can do whatever. It can become a national media thing. You can get a book tour, whatever it is, if these instances were actually existing, even at the individual level. And so I feel like it's this like game of, I don't know, whack-a-mole, where it's like, oh, surely these things must be being caused by, institutional racism, even at like the individual level. Whereas, I mean, maybe we've got the thing with the block busting, but there are also things.
Yeah, exactly. When Papa John used the actual N-word instead of saying the N-word, it didn't make him look less racist. Exactly. Collusion.
Like education, school funding, crime rates, of course, all sorts of different things that we could use to explain the outcomes of different cultures in this country.
Yeah.
That we can't.
Well, cultures are a product of like their economic and material conditions, right? Like different cultures turn out differently because of the different areas in which they arise, right? The different conditions under which they exist. And so, like, yeah, it turns out extreme economic deprivation can, in fact, affect a given group of people. That's not controversial there, bud.
Quite find so precisely with things like institutional.
Wait, did he actually say the N-word? Yes. He said he didn't say the N-word. He said the word to a boardroom of public relations professionals who were brought in to help make him look less racist. And they all quit because, you really can't help your client if you say the N-word in a fucking meeting about how to make you look less racist. I bet. Yes, of course he used the hard R, guys. Like, of course he did.
Racism, or even, anecdotally.
But all of those things you just mentioned can be products of the institutional racism, like blockbusting, where it's like, hey, this entire neighborhood of black people is just more poor because of something that started off as a racism thing, or maybe from someone who was well-meaning, a liberal, progressive, woke person, and yet this is now downstream effects. The property values are lower. That means the school's going to be underfunded. Like, this is all like.
That's why they get funding from the federal government.
They don't. It's like 10%, I think, for like public schools. Right?
On average, I think schools that are majority minority receive like 1% greater funding from the federal government than schools that are predominantly white. Even, I mean, you go.
I would really, I'm gonna Google that. I'm just gonna Google that. Get 1% more funding. Grok, is this true? Oh, well, this is the top video result. Let's take a look at this.
Almost 70 years after the Supreme Court ordered equal educational opportunities for all children, a CBS News investigation has found many schools fail that test.
National investigative correspondent Stephen Stock uncovers one important reason, and that is the school building gap.
But it's cold, so how can I focus? Can you please talk to the school to fix the toilets and to fix the building?
So I have to tell you, when I walk down this, I feel like I'm in a prison.
I know, right? Doesn't it? Why would your kids want to come here when it looks like you're in a prison?
Spend any time at all walking the halls of Baltimore's Franklin High with Cindy Smith.
No AC, you can feel it.
And you get a lesson in math that doesn't add up.
So this is a floor that's actually collapsing. Look along the wall. You can see it's dropped 2, maybe even 3 inches. This, folks, is an actual lab for high school students. People attend lab in this classroom.
We have a typical classroom, tack boards that are a mess, casework that needs to be replaced.
Why can't the school district do better?
Because we don't have enough money for it.
She's in charge of planning, design, and construction for Baltimore City Public Schools.
But wait, what about that whole extra 1%? What are you doing with the extra 1% you're receiving for being a majority non-white school?
They're not fixing our school buildings, but they will fix white people's school buildings.
Dr. Richard Lofton shared with us the student feedback he gathered as part of his research project called the Nobody Asked Me campaign, documenting the impact of schools in Baltimore like this.
Wow. So you're saying the second floor is hotter than this floor?
Which he toured with us.
Wow. And I hope the people who are making decisions about education actually come into these schools and walk around and see what we've seen.
CBS stations across the country went into deteriorating schools in high poverty districts with low property tax bases. We found those districts invested on average 40% less money in buildings than richer school districts.
Huh. Wait a minute. You mean school funding is tied to property taxes? Why, huh. That's so strange. I wonder if that might lead to different outcomes for the schools. Let's keep watching this investigative report, shall we?
With even larger disparities between majority white and majority black school districts. And
and obviously the majority black school districts were awash in all of that federal funding made available to them, right?
Many state governments make the disparity worse. Our analysis of federal data shows that on average, these states give majority white school districts almost 4 times more money for capital investments than majority black districts.
That, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but I think four times is like 400%. That's a lot more percents than, 1%.
We saw it in Maryland. Baltimore City School District, with a black population twice as high as Baltimore County School District and lower per capita income, got $19 million from local property taxes for capital spending last year. Baltimore County,
holy shit,
$201 million. That breaks down to 8.
I'm sorry, I wasn't. I was prepared for a disparity. I wasn't prepared for a more than 10 times disparity. Jesus Christ.
$1,500 per student in the wealthier, less diverse district versus Baltimore City, where it's $244.
So just again here, that's per student, right? Wait, the white supremacist is lying? I know, shock of all shocks, but it's good for us to talk about it.
7 times more.
Is this acceptable?
No, absolutely not. It's just what we have to live with.
And our young people feel in many ways that they've been betrayed by society because of their voices are not being heard.
They should be feeling abandoned by the state because it's the state where the money is coming from.
Maryland already gives both the county and city school districts roughly the same amount for capital spending, $30 million. But the city school district says they need $230 million.
We can't provide the money we don't have and we don't receive. Like, how can I build this addition here if I don't get the money?
We're talking about a disparity that has roots in history.
A history that makes it hard to catch up, according to research headed by Johns Hopkins' Dr. Josh Sharfstein.
For decades, Baltimore...
Well, it's only a Johns Hopkins researcher. I mean, he's a nerd. What could he possibly know?
has been disinvested. There have not been the same levels of investment in a city that is majority black than in the rest of the state. And the consequences of that are physically manifest in school buildings.
Maryland's legislature 3 years ago began trying to work on solutions.
We are investing in a more equitable system across the state of Maryland than almost any other state in the country.
Lawmakers did that by targeting $400 million for building and repairing schools in lower income and minority school districts, paid for in part by taking excess property taxes from wealthier districts and giving it to poorer districts.
Huh, weird how progressive taxation helps like that.
And by a sales tax on digital products like streaming and music. Does Maryland need to do more when it comes to funding these buildings?
Absolutely, Maryland has to do more, and we will, and we have, and we will. The plan that we've put forward is the next 10 years.
Those plans won't happen in time for these kids now.
The research shows that schools in worse condition are associated with more absenteeism of kids, more turnover of staff, more asthma attacks by the kids, and frankly, less progression academically.
Also, you might notice that one of those last points, more asthma attacks, and that's because specifically schools with better ventilation result in healthier children. If your school has poor, air circulation, it literally leads to more sickness, more asthma developing. It can also lead to more exposure to environmental pollutants, especially in schools built in poorer areas. Mold, exactly. So there's actual health risks here. That's why a researcher from Johns Hopkins goes and researches these factors, because they need to understand, why are children getting sick? People need to understand why that happens in order to fix the problem. HEPA filters make a big difference, and if they really cared, wouldn't have cost much to add. Exactly, Default X.
In a school, you don't have potable water.
In the school, we do not have potable water.
That just, wait, that just blows my mind.
I know, right? Many of our pipes are so deteriorated that lead flows through that water. So that water is
literally poisoning the children. Hey, I wonder why aren't these children economically achieving en masse? I wonder why. Could it be the poison in the air or the poison in the water? Who can say?
It's not drinkable.
So you can't drink the water.
You cannot drink the water.
That's right. It costs taxpayers almost $750,000 per year to provide bottled water to their schools, as opposed to just having functional plumbing.
You may ask, why doesn't the federal government help? Well, it's because federal rules set up by Congress do not allow it. So except for special targeted grants, the feds do not provide a single cent toward building new schools.
Our special investigation into this.
Whoa, that's so weird. But I thought all these majority black schools got so much more funding as a result of John Doyle's white nationalism. It's almost like white nationalists are full of lies.
School buildings continues tonight at 10. Tara Molina tells us about a school district that's bucking the trend, turning a crumbling building into a state-of-the-art facility. That's tonight at 10.
Good for that facility.
They even have better credentialed teachers with, advanced degrees. They get more.
Oh, that's just not true, John.
More funding. And I remember I went down to Cass Tech High School in Detroit.
They don't get more funding.
Because I was trying to do a fundraiser one time. And it was better than my high school, which was in Birmingham Public Schools. It was supposed to be like one of the better districts. And I go down to Cass Tech High School. And I'm like walking in between like crackheads and human feces. And I go into what looks like a Silicon Valley startup building. And I was like, okay, this is like pretty advanced. Yet I don't know how many kids in Detroit schools are literate. So clearly there's something else going on. I don't know about
that. Like 1% I don't think is going to make a huge difference. And I could just fire back an anecdote. At least I grew up in a particularly poor neighborhood. And I was in like the okay kind of middle of the line mixed school, but all the schools down in Richmond, which is like a notorious.
I'm just curious here. Let's just open this real quick. Castake High School, Detroit. Let's just take a quick look here. Oh, Cass Tech High School. There we go. The school in 2010. That's an okay school, I guess. I don't know. It looks like a retrofitted like parking ramp.
Poor neighborhood. We're really bad. There's like gunfights, drugs, people getting. I mean, there's literally, I think a movie about just how bad there was, like Coach Carter or something like that. Like these are really, really bad schools. The property values are really low, and these kids like they grow up, they don't have anything. They don't have a lot of opportunities. I don't think you can just attribute this to like, well, it's just the cultural thing. But the culture is downstream of definitely things that happen due to them being in these like segregated ghettos, essentially.
I don't know, man. I see.
But I wanted to focus back to the masculinity thing, because you mentioned the Papa John thing of this idea that like, he didn't actually do anything wrong. I don't think he quoted someone, who did something wrong to disparage that racist guy, right? Yeah. And then the reaction was, let's cancel Papa John, despite the fact that if you look at this in context, this man has no ill will towards black people. This man is specifically trying to call out racism. And I think that's kind of what's going on with the masculinity thing, where you get this concept of like toxic masculinity.
Oh, wait. Okay, sorry. So until 1977, Cass was Detroit's only magnet school and the only non-neighborhood enrollment school in Detroit. So basically, for those of you who don't know what a magnet school is essentially is a school that offers like specializations, so that you can like start specializing in a given field in high school. And that like if it's a magnet school, it allows people from outside of the district to come in, and if it's the only magnet school in the entire like Detroit area, then like everyone in Detroit would be able to go there. So like John Doyle literally just picked this school because it's in Detroit, not because it's in Oh my God. I just, dude, notable alumni. Just real quick here. John DeLorean, Rebecca Allen. If you guys know graphics and animation, you might know her. Let's see, are there any other names I recognize here? This is always so fun. We got actresses, we got rappers, we got a lot of notable people out of here. A couple of members of Motown. A lot of people going into the automobile industry, weirdly enough. Got some Harvard divinity professors. Oh, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 different major league or Olympic level athletes. You know, I'm just going to spitball here, but I'm going to maybe hazard a guess that the reason this school might get a little bit extra funding might be due to its association with a large number of wealthy individuals. Just throwing that out there.
I know you covered the Gillette commercial, right? Where like everyone freaked out because it was like calling out men, and like
it wasn't calling out men. It's like
men
stereotyping
better, right?
and disparaging them.
Right, and like this idea that like the pendulum swing back to the left is, hey, for so long we've seen these bad behaviors, and rather than try to like integrate and like, hey men, like let's fix men as men, it's more of this like, hey guys, like look at patriarchy, look at this.
Wait, so what's the point? What point is there to keeping students from going to the magnet school that likely provides the better education instead of making students go whatever school is located where they're at, even though those schools might be mostly underfunded? Well, because magnet schools usually have like enrollment processes
the
that
racist
aren't just
20 lie at the rate honest person debunks one.
True, God Sinner. Thank you for the $5 dono. But he ends up basically a lot of magnet schools have like enrollment criteria, and also like it's like applying for a college essentially, except you're in high school. Or rather, you're in middle school going into high school. So they're selective. They have enrollment criteria, etc. Like you can't just say I'm going to the magnet school and then just automatically get in, as opposed to a public school where you just automatically get into that public school. Like for example, if you go to an arts magnet school, you have to demonstrate like some skill or competency at art. Does that make sense?
It's like, you know, the men control everything. The white people are repressing us. And like this idea does alienate people because you hear this and like, you're like, well, even if you're not one of those people.
Wait, so like the Japanese system, you have to choose what high school you get into? I mean, you don't have to. Like, you can just go to the public school that you would be in. But if you want to go to like the arts magnet school in order to specifically study art, and you know that in middle school, then you have to meet like certain criteria and you have to be accepted by the school.
It's like, oh, well, why are you being mean to me? Like you said, like, why are you pushing this on me? And the reaction of like, the concept of toxic masculinity becomes this like, oh, so being masculine is bad, even though it's trying to describe the worst parts of masculinity. It's unfortunate that like people just hear that and they get turned off instantly. And it's like this overreaction from the left that causes an even more overreaction from the right to push them.
Wait, what is the overreaction from the left? Like this is my question, right? Let me back up, see if I just missed it.
In context, this man has no ill will towards black people. This man is specific.
I'm gonna guess that he doesn't remember the Papa John's thing. I'm gonna guess that he doesn't remember that because I don't know. I don't know that you can make this claim if you are familiar with the story.
Specifically trying to call out racism, and I think that's kind of what's going on with the masculinity thing, where you get this concept of like toxic masculinity. I know you covered the Gillette commercial, right? Where like everyone freaked out because it was like calling out men, and like.
It wasn't calling out men. It's
like men
stereotyping
better, right?
and disparaging them.
Right, and like this idea that like the pendulum swing.
What Gillette ad are they talking about? Like I'm sorry. Like, are people actually spending their time thinking about like a fucking Gillette commercial? Like, no wonder these ads keep popping up, because like if that's how like conservatives think about these products when they see an ad like that, one ad has now infiltrated them for years to get them thinking about Gillette. You know, it's crazy. From like 12 years ago, Jesus. What a return on investment into that advertising for Gillette. That's kind of brilliant, you know?
Swing back to the left is, hey, for so long we've seen these bad behaviors, and rather than try to like integrate and like, hey men, like let's fix men as men, it's more of this like, hey guys, like look at patriarchy, look at this, like, you know, the men control everything, the white people are repressing us, and like this idea does alienate people because you hear this and like you're like, well, even if you're not one of those people, it's like, oh well, why are you being mean to me? Like you said, like why are you pushing this on me? And the reaction of like, the concept of toxic masculinity becomes this like, oh, so being masculine is bad, even though it's trying to describe the worst parts of masculinity. It's unfortunate that like people just hear that.
I mean, again, ultimately what this seems like he's complaining about is like the branding. But the issue that I think you run into here is that if you're complaining about like if you're saying, well, the concept of toxic masculinity is good, but you know, the term turns a lot of people off. Like the issue is conservatives are going to make any term turn people off. You know, like it's going to be vilified either way. And so the real solution here is just engaging with the actual terminology that we have and explaining what it actually means. You know, when we talk about toxic masculinity, it's the traits of masculinity that hurt men. It is a term about having an idea of masculinity that harms you as a man, that stunts your growth, that, you know, renders you incapable in some circumstances of connecting with other people because of how you were conditioned. And like, it is recognizing that can begin the process of healing from that. Like it is not a term that's like, oh, masculinity itself is toxic. And like more people should know that. But we should just have more conversations about that rather than saying we need nicer terminology for it, like for these things. Yeah, exactly. Men don't cry. That is an aspect of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity can also hurt others, of course, but like predominantly the people who have to live with men the most are men. Like if you're a man, you're just a man. You're a man. You know, you have to live with yourself. So if you have a man and your concept of masculinity is toxic, if you have this toxic idea of masculinity, you're holding yourself to the toxic idea, you know? And like that explanation, I think, clears it up a lot. And I don't think that that's that difficult a conversation to have, you know? Like, I think that there is like a bit of a truth maybe to branding when it comes to like talking to, say, 15-year-olds. Because like 15-year-olds, and this is exactly the problem, right? For example, like if you're 15, 14, 12, you know, and you hear you hear the idea of feminism for the first time, you literally think, oh, feminism? That's for women because it has feminine in the name, you know? And like that's not what feminism is, but that's why you need to have a conversation about it and explain feminism is actually both for men and women. It is much like how patriarchy harms both men and women, and toxic masculinity harms men and women. Like these things are connected, but like just because it has feminine in the feminism, like that doesn't mean it's just for ladies. And I know, like when I was young, I had that association, right? And all feminists are just, you know, like, I don't know, suffragettes from like the 1800s that persist to the modern day. So I had a wrong idea about a word, but that's because no one really sat down and talked about it with me. And eventually I learned, and now I understand it a lot better. Suffragettes were so based. Yeah, but you guys know what I mean. Like in my head, I had the stereotype of like the man-hating lesbian feminist. You know, like that was the stereotype that had been embedded in my brain about what a feminist was. And like, obviously that's horseshit, but that was real. But that's because I was a dumbass. And like, I didn't know any better. And honestly, if somebody had just sat down and talked about it with me, I would have turned out a lot better, a lot sooner, you know?
and they get turned off instantly, and it's like this overreaction.
Glad to see you've grown. I mean, look, it's I you know, when you start out life with a beard and cosplaying as a man for like 25 years, you know, like you tend to grow out of, you know, the conservative evangelical household you were raised in, and learn to look at the world a little bit better, and then you grow tits
From the left that causes an even more overreaction from the right to push them away.
I have a question. How come the toxic masculinity and patriarchy and white supremacy narratives don't exist in other countries to their dominant racial groups?
They do. Like, I need to hear that again, because again, the stupidity just keeps breaking my brain.
How come the toxic masculinity and patriarchy and white supremacy narratives don't exist in other countries to their dominant racial groups?
I guess a key component of the question is, why don't those narratives exist? And the answer is they do. Like, I don't know, like, for example, India and honor killings or acid attacks, like those are a function and an outgrowth of patriarchal ideas of ownership over women, you know? Like, these ideas exist in those societies already, you know? Also, we're an interconnected planet. So like the idea of feminism has already gone around the world several times over. And also, I just can't believe Tim can ask a question like that. I know that Tim is like bottom of the barrel intellectually, but like this is sad.
Like in China, how come there's no like left side of their, you know, political spectrum saying Han supremacy is bad? And
there is, but also the Chinese government cracks down on any opposition that is sufficiently strong. But like those ideas exist there.
You know, Chinese people are oppressors.
Well, I don't know specifically much about China. Do they not like lock up dissidents to a degree there? Or?
Oh yeah, it's the point being, like, where is their political movement calling out?
Where is their political movement? Yeah, where are all the opposition political leaders in China, guys? But yeah, there is definitely a system of like Han Chinese supremacy in China. Like that, yes.
Out their moral or racial or ethnic supremacy.
I don't know if there is one for like racial or moral. I mean, you can look at
it seems like
the concept of Taiwan or Hong Kong.
Like, I'm sorry, but like the idea that like other places on the planet can't be racist is like America, the only place on the planet that's racist, guys. Like other places can also be racist. It's just that the system depends on like the society it's in. There are oppressive systems can exist in any kind of society. Someone has never read about the Balkans.
Kong and these people kind of rebelling against the leadership there. But
they're the same ethnic background. Taiwan is the original Republic of China. It's a difference of political ideology.
Sure, but I think they consider themselves like different peoples, right? Or maybe, I don't know. I'm not like.
Well, the Taiwanese are going to say they're Taiwanese for sure. And China is going to say the Taiwanese are Chinese. My point is, in the United States, the only group with racial outgroup preference are white liberals. Blacks, Asians, Latinos have a racial in-group preference, and white conservatives have a racial in-group preference. White liberals have a racial out-group preference.
You say out-group preference, like if you poll them, they're like more likely to support their community than the party or something.
No, they're more likely to support non-white people.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Also, I think you can do both. You can be supportive. Like, man, you can be supportive of people who are white and not white. You know, you can just be. This is truly brain rot. I only present to you the finest.
And so, white liberals are the only group that would support non-white liberals.
So, racial outgroup, meaning black people are more likely to vote for and support black people. Mm-hmm. Latinos are more likely for Latinos, Asians for Asians, white.
Yeah, don't hit up Tim Pool with the Romani. His mind will fucking explode.
Conservatives for white people and white liberals for any other race.
Sounds like white liberals are the least racist people.
I would argue that makes them the most racist.
Well, if we're willing to vote for anyone in our outgroup?
No, it means they.
No. You see, white liberals are the most racist because you're more willing to vote for non-white political figures. You see, the really non-racist thing to do would be to prioritize your own race. That's the non-racist thing to do. Like, Jesus Christ, Tim. Tim, do you not hear what you're saying? Tim! Like, it's just so dumb.
The self-hating whites.
Jaeger Larson, thank you for the tier 1 sub. God.
Don't support white people. It means they have a preference.
They specifically have an anti-white bias, you're saying?
Yes. Well, we call it racial outgroup preference.
Well, what I heard from that is like, oh, they're willing to support anyone other than specifically white people, which is kind of what my experience has been in like San Francisco. It's not, let me be clear, there are people on like the fringe left that are like, oh, fuck white men, for sure. But for the most part, it's just like, hey, like I'll support anyone regardless of their politics. And like, that's kind of what that sounded like to me, or at least maybe that was me projecting my experience onto what you were saying.
Like, I just don't know that you necessarily need to cede the ground to him that like, oh yeah, there are far left people who are willing to say fuck all men. I don't know that you need to do that, you know? Like, I'm sorry, there's not really like a fuck all men category of like leftists that I, at least that I've encountered, and I'm pretty far left.
Like progressive activists, one might say, are nuts, but they do hold a disproportionate amount of power among the liberal faction in this country.
God, I wish that was true. God, I wish that was true.
Be it the Democrats or otherwise. And then you see how they implement this in universities and at protests with the progressive stick. If you're a white man, shut up, sit down, don't speak.
See, that's the thing is I experienced that, right, at the SJW college, UCSD, right? And I even took a gender studies class. They had like a requirement DEI class, right? So like I thought like going in, I would watch Tim Pool. I would watch like anti-SJW content. And I thought this was going to be like the wildest thing ever. And going into that, it was really just kind of tame. Like sometimes they would say some wild stuff, but it was never like, hey, you're a white man, sit down, shut up. If anything, I was the guy talking in class the most, like because I was the one who was more opinionated. I wanted to have these conversations. I was really interested in like, hey, like this seems like an insane idea. Can I push back on it? Like no one ever like marginalized me for being white. At the worst, there was maybe some rhetoric, but that's kind of like my whole thing about this masculinity thing is.
Yeah, exactly, Amber Brains. Like I don't understand why not ask Tim about that. Tim literally says like white people would be right to create like a white supremacist state because it is natural to have an in-group preference. Like you guys understand how fucked up that is, right?
Yeah, I get some bad things coming at me, you know, maybe some like mean comments, but that's like really the extent of it. Like I don't feel discriminated against, and like why let that change like who I am and my politics and make me feel like it didn't make me feel like I couldn't be myself in the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I know we all have our opinions and that's our prerogative, but we do live in a two-party system, which is to say that you have to at some point align yourself with whichever party you believe is going to be a better approximation of how you want the world to look. And so I have, you know, complete respect for your opinions and your experience and you aligning yourself with progressives, maybe even voting for Democrats. But the problem is that when Democrats are in charge, whether that be expressly in political institutions or even culturally, you do see that demonization, which maybe is caricaturized in something like a Gillette.
I want anyone to be more specific about how the Democratic Party is like spreading around this fuck men mentality. I want any specifics. Please, I'm begging you. I'm fucking begging you guys. Give me specifics. I need more than a Gillette commercial from 6 years ago, guys. You guys are to understand we're like 25 minutes into this, and your biggest contribution of like men being discriminated against is a fucking Gillette commercial you had to see one time. Are you kidding me? Like, do you understand how not oppressed you have to be for your main point of oppression to be a fucking Gillette shaving commercial? The trauma runs deep. I guess, you know, they still bear the scars I'll never recover. Gillette PTSD.
Gillette commercial. But even then, I mean, you can trace this back to growing up, and you may not feel like, a mean comment here or there is really like stripping you of some identity, but it is true that girls are encouraged, boys are treated like they're defective girls. Girls are the example.
What? Boys are treated like they're defective girls? Self-report much? I mean, there's some speculation that John Doyle and Nick Fuentes might be, kind of but that being said, like, what does he mean by that? I think he means that, like, boys are being treated as like, oh man, I wish I would have had a girl. Like, it's bizarre. They just practice smooching is all. Yeah, they just want to be prepared for when they get girlfriends. Exactly, Lunar Spunk. But like, he's trying to allege that families are trying to force their sons to be daughters. Jack, your mistake is thinking these inbred fucks have any idea. Well, that's true. Except that, to correct that impression, I don't think they have any idea. But me pointing out that they don't, if someone stumbles across this video, I hope makes it click a little bit that these people are dumb as fuck. They're dumb and they're weak. And if you are turning to this guy, if you're turning to John Doyle, the guy who's telling you that, like, society thinks that you're a defective girl if you're a boy, like, I'm sorry, that's some weak ass shit. That is some weak shit. Like, oh, you've been so traumatized from seeing that commercial on television, that one commercial from 6 years ago. You've been so traumatized. I'm sorry. Is your masculinity so weak that it's threatened by a goddamn commercial? 30 seconds of airtime? Like, seriously, be a man. Be a man. Get over yourself. Like, back in my day, men watched Mulan and realized that in order to be a man, they had to be swift as a coursing river. Like, be a man. It just seems to me like, but I saw a Gillette commercial. I don't know. Maybe have you considered shutting the fuck up? Like, I'm sorry. Maybe grow up a little bit and then come back. Yeah, be a man with all the strength of a great typhoon. Exactly. Go train. We need to accommodate boys by having guns in class. Wait, what? The idea comes from PragerU, and it's basically boys are asked to be quiet in school, which is girly, and therefore progressives hate boys. And we need to accommodate boys by having more guns. Oh, this is the PragerU idea. Oof, that sucks. Also, I don't know why that alert didn't come up, but thank you for the $5 super chat, Nomi Sunrider.
You're supposed to behave and sit up straight and do all this, and boys are being plugged into this learning environment.
Yeah, like, boys aren't capable of behaving themselves. Why would you have any behavioral standards for boys? Like, listen to how much contempt he has for boys as a concept. Yeah, no boy can possibly behave themselves and listen and, like, learn things. That's stupid.
Which is frankly like alien to them in the way that boys tend to learn versus girls. And so a lot of them just check out
on some of these. Like, because like I said, like my middle school, like, was the most progressive private middle school like you could ever like go to. And I was never shamed for being a boy.
Yeah, it's John Doyle, the guy who kisses his sister.
Did a little rowdy stuff, and I got in trouble for that. But it was never like, oh, you need to sit down and shut up like a girl. Like, I'm a little confused.
Right, but the fact is that males tend to have a more tactile learning basis,
like hands-on sort of stuff. Yeah,
physical activity.
I'm gonna need like a citation on that. Like, I'm gonna need a citation on that. Otherwise, it's just, hey, I heard from a guy that boys only learn if they're able to touch things, and that's why men are better at mining and shit. Like, this is literally like, I know you're getting high in the dorm room, and I heard from a guy who heard from a guy like that. I'm sorry, that doesn't. No, you have to have like actual data to make these claims.
Activity, things like that, a requirement for more physical activity. But the entire school system is, we give you 7 hours of sit down and shut up, and we give you half an hour of go run and play.
I wonder what the underlying system is that leads to that type of educational system. I wonder what type of educational system might be prioritized in our society. And gee whiz, I wonder who might have designed such a system. Really makes you think. If only we had some kind of answer or ability to apply critical analysis, but I'm sure one will present itself shortly.
Yeah.
Where boys probably need substantially more tactile learning. And so what John's saying is, it's not that they're going to the boys and saying, you're a boy, you're bad. They're saying, behave in the way we've outlined.
Right, which
and
is against their nature is kind of the argument. Like
it's just more feminine. It's more female centric.
It creates
John Doyle. Tim Pool is really bad at trying to be a red pillar type. He's not good at it.
Sure, which are going to make them less successful, and it tries to elevate women into being more successful, let alone to mention, the things, all these programs, outreach, women in STEM, everything like that.
Can we pause?
Yeah, I wonder, just out of curiosity, I wonder who made this system of education, who formed it, and for what purpose education serves in our society. Like, what does it do, Because historically, the thing that education does is prepare students for the workforce. So the point I'm trying to get at here with my vague allusions is that capitalism is what, creates, or not creates, but it is the system that undergirds our educational institutions. And as such, our educational institutions cater to that system. Right. And so when we're talking about this, who was in charge of both the economic system and the political mechanisms that made our educational system? What group of people was that exactly? Yes, it's true. POC women. It's true. Nailed it. White men. It was white men.
Because, when you say they're going to be less successful, this has kind of been how we've done schooling for decades, right? This wasn't really borne out in the past.
Also, the vast majority of our modern education system is also built upon the white supremacist idea of eugenics, but that's a conversation for another day.
100 years that men were less successful because they were feminized
that's
in school,
no, it's not. I guess you can say feminized.
Tim, is that why you had to drop out of high school? They were about to finish the feminization process?
The right prepares students for the workforce. The left prepares students for the T-workforce.
Twerkforce. That's right. We on the left, we have the biggest asses. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 sub, Socket Tanuki. Appreciate it.
But
you know what? Also, just real quick, comment, and subscribe, you silly gooses, because it's hard to do a show for 6 hours. It's a hard thing to do. Do the things that help the show to continue to exist, because I couldn't do it without you guys. You guys make it possible for me to put together these programs. Let's continue going on.
That was what you guys were saying. They're saying
take a look at the last 100 years.
The last 100.
Quite literally, I think the argument would.
The last 100 years. You mean? That what an interesting time period to select.
Support that over the last 100 years of industrialized, institutionalized learning facilities, it has been to the detriment of men, and we can see that substantially.
What metric?
Men are more likely to commit suicide. They don't live as long.
I think everyone
They're more
is
likely
right
to be
now.
unemployed. They're more likely to be unemployed. Right now, especially in this generation, millennials and Gen Z, they're more likely to live at home with their parents, not have jobs, not go to university.
This to 10 years ago.
It's almost like a lot of these problems have some kind of economic root to them. I wonder if it has to do with capitalism. I'm just wondering here.
Or 20 years ago, maybe, yeah, sure. But if we're
right,
looking at past 100 years, and you talked about industrialization, where it's I think just on a whole, everyone is better off post 1860s, invention of factories.
The point is this:
cities,
since we've implemented this institutionalized learning industrialization, you've had a downward trend. And
of what? Well, no. Of what? I'm sorry. You're trying to allege that public education has worsened the lives of men? Oh, okay.
That's what I'm asking.
That doesn't mean
what
it's
industrialized
the sole
learning are you talking about?
Industrialized learning is when pre-industrial revolution you had
something happened in the 1860s that made their lives harder. Yeah, it's I wonder what.
All schoolrooms, sort of, where it was
the schoolhouse with the one teacher and the 20 kids or whatever.
And even then, it wasn't entirely that way. A lot of kids would just learn from their parents. are through correspondence or through self-study or through their, largely
but I mean, if we're comparing
industrialized,
we wouldn't say like we're smarter, better off than that as a whole. I mean, I feel like most people are doing better, absolutely, than the like 1850s learning.
But we're not talking about technological advancement. We're talking about the structure of society.
Yeah, I'm talking about like life expectancy, happiness, like
technological advancement. Indeed, has continued to go up, largely due to oil.
Down actually, in
the 1850s.
No, maybe not from the 1850s, but quite recently, life expectancy has dipped. I think in the last 5 or 10 years or so.
Can we also just acknowledge that like public schools didn't, as a concept, accepted at large, didn't really catch on until like 1870. Like I know a lot of people might be surprised to hear this, but like 1870 was basically the first year that America had public schools in every state for elementary schoolers. Like it's a relatively recent concept. And like the idea that Tim is saying like, well, it made the lives of men worse. How? In what way? Yeah, by the way, I just want to say 1870 public schools. Again, the education system set up by white men because it was literally before the end of slavery.
Particularly for white men who have been so vilified unfairly. And what was the other one? Happiness. I don't know how you would quantify that.
That is a hard one for sure.
The general social survey, or as Tim mentioned, suicide rates. That's a pretty good.
No. Oh wait, no. Sorry, 1870 is post-Civil War. My bad.
I think it's quite simple. I mean, happiness is relative. It's subjective, and humans adapt. But the fact that we have a large portion of the younger generation of men.
Yeah, the Civil War was 1865, right? Yeah.
Their needs, not in employment, education, and training, is indicative of a failure of our society towards men.
Yeah.
Women are more likely to go to university and graduate than men by like what? It's like 60-40 now?
But they're suicide.
Why is that? I want to ask why Tim thinks that. Because he's alleging it's due to a systematic imbalance that is favoring women over men. And I want to know in what way, right?
Suicide rates are up as well, right? I would say men are better at everything, so that's why we kill ourselves more, because we're better at it, and they're more likely to do. I mean, people always bring up gun deaths, right? Like, I think half of them, there's like 13,000 of them per year. Liberals will complain about this, and like gun. Yeah, most of them are suicides, and like if you have a gun, it's easier, and women tend to do things like wrist stuff, pills, things that
You're an unemployed woman. Where's your sympathy? It's at the top of the economic hierarchy. You just have to go get it. Just build yourself a woman rocket and go grab it. It'll be like an afternoon. Ascend to the heights of the social ladder.
You can recover from. And I think like it's one of those things where people are unhappier in the trends right now because of what you're talking about, because you look at your boomer dad and your Gen X dad and it's like, well, what the fuck? Like you got all these opportunities and I don't get any of these, and there's all these expectations. It's like, what's the big lie of like, just go to college, you'll be successful. And like I graduated college. I was one of the lucky ones. A lot of people just didn't get jobs out of college. They're struggling. I can't afford a house. The only people I know in my generation, I'm 29, that have a house are the 2 engineers that got married. And even then they're not in California. They're in like Colorado, they're in, some other place where the cost of living is much easier. So like, I think this idea that this is because of the, demonization of men is not nearly so borne out as it is. People had this expectation of what life was supposed to be. And it's just.
Yeah. Like, I think he's largely correct about this, right? Like the premise here is just that we're kind of economically fucked right now as a generation, and well, a lot of men, for example, go into, when economically fucked, go into like construction, go into like those trades, because those trades are disproportionately male. Like they're disproportionately staffed by men. And so there is a difference here between like college attainment and like men going off into the workforce, because men are going into the workforce. They're just not going to college because it's easier for them to get on a good career path without going to college.
It's not happening. And so all these, like as a whole society in our generation.
Which is to say, as I said earlier, easier does not mean easy.
And is more unhappy because we're not getting what we want. We don't have the house. We don't have the white picket fence.
So once again, the issue is if you're an 18-year-old white man and you grew up in a society, you've experienced no privilege.
Why do you say that? No privilege. Like when I say
because
you don't have the Gen X privilege, right? You don't have that economy. But when it's like, hey, like because again, I hate the word privilege here, because it's like you don't feel the idea of black people are your cops are less likely to attack you
because that's
you're black,
not
right.
Because what I would say is the challenge with what you're describing is it's based on class for the most part.
oh God, that was Tim is a very funny man. You know, Tim is it's an underappreciated talent he has when he gets asked a very, very inconvenient question for his narrative. I just want to watch that again. Like, he's asked, well, you're less likely to be attacked by cops, right?
Attack you
because that's
black,
not
right.
Because what I would say is the challenge with what you're describing is it's based on class for the most part.
It's
with sometimes a racial component.
I was reading a study
with sometimes a racial component. Hey Tim, are class and race correlated in some way in this country that has historically economically discriminated against African Americans? I wonder. It's weird that earlier in the episode you could talk about the prevalence of redlining and blockbusting, and yet somehow not make the connection here. It's wild, the mental gymnastics you have to do in order to avoid connecting those two ideas.
Actually, I want to say this is it's on a book called How Fascism Works, which is like the most liberal book I could have brought up here. But it was talking about the hiring practices of people who report themselves as former convicts. And it was like black versus white, not a former convict, black versus white, former convict. And for like the black who are not a former convict, the percentage of whether or not you get hired is already like 10 times lower or something ridiculously low. And then for the black convict level, even the white former convicts were getting like hired at like a 10 to 5% higher rate. It does seem like there is at least this product of, and people call that privilege. I don't like that, because if I'm a white guy not getting hired, I don't feel privilege, right? That's why I don't like the word.
So the issue is there's no such thing as white privilege. That is a fact statement, not an opinion.
What do you mean?
Again, like there's no such thing. It's a fact. Like what are you talking about, man?
About that. Because what I just described,
because there's
what people mean, because I think that's a bad word.
Because you can
again, it comes down to terminology. Like I don't think it's that difficult of a concept. I feel like I explained it to a lot of you guys in like the span of like a minute. I don't think it's a hard phrasing. Again, there's no reason to cede this ground to Tim Pool.
When you're trying to determine any kind of like fact basis in science, we look for controls. Mm-hmm. And when you look at any other non-white nation, these concepts don't exist. However,
we're a unique nation.
Similar.
How are we back on this? Did we do a time loop? Did we do a time loop here? How are we back at this exact point? We've been talking for another like 10 minutes. Jesus Christ!
Like the history
meaningless.
Of racism.
Similar issue.
No, I'm saying it's meaningless.
So if I finish the point that I'm trying to make, instead of you interrupting before the point can be completed,
okay.
The Han Chinese, for instance, have an ethnic majority and supremacy, and they experience what one would define as a privilege.
Okay.
Yeah,
but it's not because it's white privilege.
Yeah, it's Han privilege, sure.
It's just majority privilege. A nation's ethnic and cultural majority tends to dictate what they want and what they expect.
Okay.
That will never go away nor change.
Well, I think it can change. I think if expectations change, but you just described it. The point is,
so the point that I was making,
you're agreeing with the.
There's and maybe Tim's not realizing that he let it slip here, but there's a difference between being a majority in a country and an ethnic group having supremacy in a country, right? Like Tim doesn't realize it, right? But like, if you're talking about the concept of Han supremacy, let's just insert the maybe an equivalent here in the United States, Anglo-Saxon supremacy, or I don't know, let's get even more on the nose here, white supremacy. Do you guys see how maybe the thing he said was just very obviously racist in a crazy ass way, and he doesn't even realize it. He doesn't even realize it.
Concept, which
there's no white privilege. And if you are a Gen Z white man, you've never experienced such a thing. So when they say,
oh my god, again, the comparison here is just saying, well, you need to compare the situation of like a white man who's 18 and average white man who's 18, average black man who's 18 in America. Like those economic situations are comparable. Like that's when we're talking about privilege, we're talking about relative to someone else of your relative station who is, not white. It blows my mind that people in 2025 don't remember that there were Irish Italians need not apply signs in store windows in like 1950. Yeah, it's really bizarre, Like, I mean, so many people's favorite show is like The Sopranos, and like The Sopranos is a show about a man desperate to fit in with white society, fueled in part because he's Italian, and grew up as a member of the out group. Like, it just, I don't know, like, just pick up the themes of the shows you think are your favorite. My problem with white privilege is that, in my opinion, it puts all the onus on the individual rather than the system. The focus should be on the system, not individuals. Yeah, but when we're talking about white privilege, we're talking about systemic privilege. We're talking about like the systemic racial oppression of our system, right? We're taught that like it is a systemic understanding of how your privilege as a white person is different from how another person operates underneath this oppressive system we all operate on, right? So I understand what you're getting at, but like it is at the end of the day, like talking about individual experiences underneath that system.
Say, white guys would go and apply for a job, they'd get it. And now a 17-year-old white guy applies and they go, no white people, get out. And he goes, there's no privilege because there isn't.
White people? I'm sure this has happened before, but like, is there like a massive influx of people like we don't hire white people? I mean, first of all, it's literally illegal, right?
It should be, but this is typically what the left supports.
Wait, no, but it's that's illegal, man. Like what? Oh, they're trying. Yeah, like they're putting up the whites need not apply signs. Like, what are you talking about, dude?
So we interviewed a pro skateboarder
supporting the idea of we can't hire white men. Like,
absolutely,
they're supporting the idea of like I worked at
Floyd era went in the to people of color to women in the S&P 100 or something.
Boosting a marginalized group is not the same as saying no white men. If there are people that say you cannot hire white men,
it's a matter of
because
policy.
You're assuming it's a zero-sum game.
To hire white men.
Yeah, no. Wait, what? It's illegal to hire white men.
If he started a company and all he were hiring were white men, T-minus. What until a lawsuit comes in? They would be
like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Dude, how many companies in America have been founded by all white men? Shut the fuck up. Every single time this jabroni opens his mouth, and that is the word that perfectly describes this man, the world sucks a little bit more.
Investigated. You cannot start an S&P 100 company or some serious company without hiring at least some women.
Yeah, you guys see it. He's a jabroni. I don't even know what that means, but that's what he is.
Some minorities. So it's illegal to hire based on merit, which, yes, in practice makes
that's
it
not illegal to be hired
based
based on merit, first of all, because the idea that
sure
like no, because you're describing it like they just found a black woman on the street and they're like, get in here, right? Versus like, hey, when you look at a pool of qualified candidates, you can't select one race, which is a very different thing. And it's not a zero-sum game. You have a bunch of different slots. If it was one slot and you're like,
I really appreciate how much more in shape the left dude is than everyone else.
Yeah, it is one of the things that he has going for him specifically on this show. I appreciate that a lot. And one of the reasons I'm going to put more effort into my body so that I can represent the left well.
For this one job, you can't hire a white guy. I think like the only thing that would ever make sense for that is if you're like casting for a show and it's this character's black, right?
But it is a fact that this happens. That white guys are passed over.
Right, but you're describing it as
I would love, name your top 5 white guys.
A phenomenon that is so widespread that every 18-year-old Zillennial is experiencing this, which is, at least in my experience, is like growing up in this progressive area, in the most progressive place on the planet. This is not happening. I'm not getting discriminated against for being white. Like I said, I'll get some insults here or there, but it's not
That's
like
called being discriminated against for being.
It is actually kind of fascinating how little John Doyle has talked during this. It's like he's afraid to reveal his power level.
What? Yes.
Okay, sure, but not on an institutional level for jobs. Like no one's like, we're not
what are you
hiring.
comparing it to?
I'm comparing it to like every other white person that I graduated with, like all the white people around me. Like none of these people are
generations
struggling.
don't experience the same thing as the other generation. Like literally.
Yeah, that is how time works, Tim.
Gen Z men are struggling.
I am in Gen Z technically, and I hang out with a lot of younger people because I had a deferred college like graduation. So.
Would you agree that Gen Z men are struggling?
Yes, absolutely, but I don't think it's because of white men discrimination.
I didn't say it was. It's a component.
Yeah.
The point is when the left comes out and says,
wait, why? Yeah, again, why agree? You don't need to cede that ground.
We want affirmative action in hiring and colleges and public contracting. The 17 or 18-year-old white man is going, whatever it is you think boomers got, I don't have. I don't.
Yeah, but do you understand that, like, Gen Z also includes what, black people? Like, there's more than just white people in Gen Z? Because, like, that seems like you're completely overlooking the fact that there's a comparable aged group of a different demographic.
Don't get. So when you create a racially discriminatory system, you have created a privilege for certain classes of people.
Yeah, in that specific thing. Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I was talking about. Like, you don't, even if, like, just for a second, assume that the phenomenon that we both agree exists is called white privilege, just because that's what people call it. It exists insofar as, like, yeah, this person might be preferenced in this specific area, or, you might not just face the same problem as a black person here, but you don't experience white privilege. You don't. I don't feel the absence of something. Well, you agree the majority group in control is going to have some sort of, like, in-group preference for that same
which for the past 15, 20 years has been liberal left. So they're white critical.
To an extent. I mean, our country is not, like, a liberal left majority ruled by. They're not like the majority.
When Jack Dorsey was in charge of X, for instance, if you post FBI crime stats, you'd get banned.
I'm sorry, your example.
Yeah, Jack Dorsey, ultimate liberal. Wait, let me just check something real quick. Jack Dorsey. Let's see, politics. Okay, this liberal has backed Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. So I do have to say I don't think this guy would be described as a liberal. God. Oh, and he endorsed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president. Fuck. All right.
Of whether or not white men or liberals are in control is just Twitter not allowing, like.
Perhaps I could describe it as Facebook, YouTube, and X, the three largest social media platforms in the country and the world.
Social media is a big component of our lives.
Banning people for
man, the idea that, like, everyone's on social media, like, the social media space is such a small part of the world. It's such a small, like, minimized human existence. Like, go the fuck outside, man. Play baseball. I don't know, play with a frisbee or something. Get a dog. Throw a frisbee for a dog. Like, you'll be so much happier than worrying about what social media CEOs think about politics. That's bizarre.
For posting fact data because it was deemed racist.
Yeah, but that's not just posting the fact data. Almost if you're posting, like, 1350 stuff, it's because you're trying to paint a greater narrative of, black people have a crime gene or something.
So
literally, there was a trend of just saying 1350 as a shorthand for essentially saying black people are subhuman. Like, that's how white supremacists used stats and figures, like Tim Pool is alleging, but is, sure. The dog whistles were merely the wind whistling through the trees.
You're not disagreeing with me.
I'm saying that if you're using the example of, like, oh, look at our institutions and how they're overwhelmingly liberal, if you're talking about social media.
What I would have loved is to just ask Tim Pool, what facts and figures? I would have liked to just ask him, like, the direct question, like, what facts and figures are you talking about, Tim? And, like, have him spell that out. Genuinely, I feel like if you ask Tim and, like, just give him enough rope, like, he will intellectually hang himself, like, it's, I don't think he's clever enough to avoid it,
Yeah, they were for a while. I think that has since shifted, obviously, especially
and major cities, institutions are liberal as well.
Major cities, yeah, but if you're talking about, like, the country as a whole, jobs, like, all these places, this is not, like, everything everywhere. Like, it is absolutely part of it, 100%, and, like, half the country, sure, is, like, liberal, progressive, not progressive.
Yeah,
liberal,
I saw the one with Lance from the
But the idea that, like, that is the same as saying, like, a white majority in-group is just not, like, borne out. There's not, like, I guess you might say like certain people might discriminate against your politics in certain areas. Definitely in San Francisco, I've had people who are, MAGA leaning at the least. But like, that is not the same as like a white in-group preference. This does exist.
This is not there's not a debate on this issue. This is a fact statement that we had Supreme Court hearings over as to liberal institutions not admitting hiring white people.
But that's not what I'm saying.
Now,
you're saying does this happen? I'm saying yeah, obviously. I'm saying this is not the widespread concept of America. Is this in-group privilege for white liberal progressives or liberal progressives? Like, I just don't think that's the case.
No, it's anti-white.
Sure, liberal progressives being the majority in-group, in the same way you might say that America was a primary white in-group preference in like the 60s. Like there's not like that sort of thing going on, like to the extent of like, oh, we're like
the point being the left right now is penalizing young men for something they did not do. It's a sins of the father.
I would love to know what you're talking about, Tim. What do you mean? How is the left punishing young men?
Penalizing how? Like you talk about discrimination, which is true.
If you apply to go to Harvard, you have to score higher substantially than a Latino or black person to get in.
Yeah.
That's called a penalization.
That sort of, but again, this is like
they literally deduct against your score based on your race.
Right, and they do that for like Asians the worst, right? Too. It's
I
know. There's like a whole lawsuit about this. Did they get rid of that?
I think they technically.
Oh God! You know what's really funny, by the way, is that affirmative action helped white people the most. So genuinely, Tim is just kind of nuts here.
Technically didn't. They changed the way they went about it, which was another controversy. I don't know where the lawsuit ended up. It's been a while since we covered that one.
But this is also one of the things where I'm like, I haven't gotten to finish this point, but the idea like you don't experience privilege is like, you don't feel less detriment. You don't feel that.
I've only ever felt more from it. I've only ever felt more detriment.
Exactly. You only ever feel it when it's against you. So like if someone is like, oh, like let's just say we're talking about the 1960s, where like obviously you would assume like white privilege exists in the 60s, right?
No.
We can agree. No.
No.
Okay. Well,
I don't want to get into that.
I kind of know your politics. I don't want to get into it.
You couldn't marry someone who wasn't the same race as you. You couldn't live with them.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like the concession of like, oh, my grandparents were the crazy ones, but I know better. It's like this has been a consistent trend and in the country's history.
Well, hold on, wait. I'm literally just saying, was it not obvious that you had a harder life if you were black in the 60s? You can't say no to that. Come on.
Actually, Derek Bell would disagree with you.
Well, actually, some dumb fuck you don't know would say otherwise. Who's Derek Bell? I don't know, just some guy I went to school with in middle school. He hangs out by the hardware store.
I have no idea who that is.
He's one of the founders of critical race theory.
He would say it was easier to be black in the 60s?
His argument is that the end of segregation was a detriment to black people.
Okay, I don't care. That sounds stupid. But
the
point I'm saying is obviously in the time...
This is critical race theory.
Yeah.
He works alongside Kimberly Crenshaw. They wrote the book on this stuff.
Okay.
The argument among the people who advocate the concept of white privilege is that separate spaces for black people, they call them POC spaces, are better.
Safe spaces. No, I experienced that.
I wouldn't call it, they don't call it safe spaces. The argument was from Derek Bell that they said Plessy v. Ferguson was wrong. He says there should be black-only schools. There should be black-only businesses.
Okay, this guy sounds like a radical racist person. I don't like this person.
But this is
what you're describing.
This is critical race theory, the book. This is what the universities are teaching. Derek Bell is a prominent thought leader on this.
In DEI course. I literally took gender studies. I didn't learn about Derek Bell, maybe, but I don't think this is what's like the universal like university. First of all, the fact that I am familiar with so many college people and no one has told me this before. I'm not saying this isn't real, by the way.
But you haven't studied critical race theory.
No, I'm saying this is not like the universally applied theory to most of these places.
Has Tim studied critical race theory? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and guess no.
We're like, yeah, we need to segregate society.
How much time have you spent in the black community?
A lot.
Well, okay, Pikachu man, I understand where you're coming from, but I think there is I think that in our context, like it's not like, for example, German privilege, because when we're talking about race is a bullshit social construct. There's not a like one homogenous white ethnicity. It's just, hey, you look white, all right. Like white supremacy, white privilege, it's specifically due to the racial history of our country. If we're talking about Japan, then there would be like a Japanese privilege, especially compared to like, for example, the Ainu people. Like you're going to have or a Korean, you're going to have like certain privileges or lack thereof in Japan, based on being in that in-group or
Derek
out-group.
Bell, he starred in a show called Derek and Yeshua. Back in the 2000s.
That went over my head, Sake Tanuki. I'm sorry. I'm only 5'6".
Riverboat deck is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and switching streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, dating, plenty more. Your sense of fashion, you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack. Riverboat.